Hi everyone, in this next video we're going to continue learning basic Maya skills while we're modeling this abstract triangle sculpture. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so let's start with a new scene. Let's go up to Create, Polygon Primitives, make sure Interactive Creation is unchecked. Let's go into Pyramid, and then click this little box to open up the pyramid options. Side length, let's leave that at 1. Number of sides in the base, let's leave that at 4. Height divisions 1, cap division 0. Up axis, let's leave this as Z, and everything else should be okay. So let's press create. This creates a pyramid in the middle of the scene. We can press F to zoom in a little bit. So for the purposes of this scene, let's press W and rotate this pyramid 45 degrees in the Z-axis by going up in our channel box to the to rotate, and under the Z option, let's type 45. So this rotates it more or less orthogonal to the grid. Let's quickly talk about pivot points. In Maya, a pivot point is the point that defines the position around which an object is rotated or scaled or moved. By default, an object's pivot point is in its center. So you can see that if I rotate this object, it's rotating it around some sort of invisible center point of this pyramid. So we can move this pivot point by let's first turn on snap to points by clicking this icon, and then holding down the D key. And with that held down, we press the middle mouse button, which in most cases it's going to be the scroll wheel. You press that and drag it towards the corner. And so now the pivot point has become moved to this bottom left corner here. And so let's press W to bring up the move tool and make sure that the pivot point is now in the bottom left instead of the center of the object. So if I press E to rotate, you can see that the object is now rotating around that bottom left corner as a pivot point instead of the center. But let's undo that and switch back to move. So now let's copy this pyramid a bunch of times using the duplicate command. It should be worth mentioning right now that for those of you following along on an Apple computer, you really need to go out and get a mouse with a third button and scroll wheel. A lot of the functions in Maya simply aren't possible without the use of this third button. Having said that, let's press Control D with the pyramid selected to duplicate the pyramid, Control D, and then making sure that this magnet with the dot icon is checked, is pushed down. Let's middle mouse drag from here to here, and this will duplicate and snap the next pyramid over exactly so that it lines up exactly where the edge of the pyramid occurs. So we press Control D again to duplicate again, Control D to duplicate again, until we start getting this row of pyramids. Let's turn on these edges, wireframe on shaded, so we can see them more clearly. So let me quickly just show you a better way to do this. I'm going to Control Z and undo some of these. And with this one selected, let's go to Edit Duplicate Special, and let's click this box to open up the Duplicate Special options. So in this, let's leave geometry type on copy, group under parent, and let's turn translate in the Y direction. So this box represents X, Y, and Z. So let's change this to 1 and leave this as 0. Rotate 0, 0, 0. Scale 1, 1, 1. And number of copies 10. So what this is going to do, it's going to copy this pyramid 10 times, and each time moving it over by 1 unit. And I know the pyramid itself is only 1 unit by 1 unit. So let's duplicate special and see what happens. So it did it, and so now I have this row of pyramids here. with all of these still selected, let's go back up to edit duplicate special options, and let's translate in the other direction, in the X direction now. 1, turn this to 0 and leave this on 0. So now when I press this, I'm going to make a row this way. So it didn't make a row of those because I must have not have had it selected, but that's okay, so I'm just going to delete this one. So now let's go to show and let's turn the grid off so we can see this a little better. And delete this one too. Oh, I also want to point out that there's a really nice scaling tool in Duplicate Special. Why don't you just watch this while I show you real quick. I'm going to undo this last couple moves real quick, and I'm going to select all these, and then now instead in my Duplicate Special options, I'm going to scale each row up by 1.2. So it's going to translate it in the X direction by 1 unit this way, and then every time it translates it, it's going to scale it up by 1.2, and it's going to do it 10 times. So now let's duplicate special and you'll see what happens. So each row gets progressively larger. This is really powerful, and you should definitely explore this later on your own. But I'm actually going to undo this real quick and get back to what I was originally going to show you. So let me duplicate this. I'm going to duplicate special, and let's turn off scale, and that should be fine. And so now I have this row of 10 by 10. So now, making sure that all the pyramids are selected by cross-window dragging, let's shift right-click and then go down to combine, so we can work on all these objects at once rather than have them as separate objects. So now let's say when I select it, Maya considers this one object instead of 100 small pyramids. Now I'm going to right click on all of it and go into vertex mode. So I can see all the points like that, and I can even press 4 on the keyboard to look at it in wireframe mode. So to get that wave effect, I used a tool called soft selection, which basically selects all the neighboring vertices around the vertex that you select. So in this case, I'm going to select a random one here, and press W to make sure you have the move tool on. And now press and hold down B, the B key, the letter B, and then at the same time drag and left click your mouse. So this turns on soft selection. And then as you're dragging and left click dragging, this is the fall off of the soft selection. So and then you press B to turn it off again. So let me just demonstrate that again. So I select a vertex, I press B to turn on soft select, and then with B held down, I left click and drag to just the fall off radius. Now if you go to tool settings over here, and this may not be apparent, under move you can expand the soft selection menu, and you'll see that this is checked, and there's a bunch of different presets in here determining like the fall off curve of your soft selection, but let's just leave this on the first one that's default. So with this soft selection on, let's just move this point up and see what happens. Let me press 5 to turn it back to shaded mode, so you can see. So nothing happens because my snap is still on, so let's actually turn this off. So once I turn it off, I should be able to fully drag it up like this, and you can see that starts happening. However, the bottom is starting to deform up like this, which isn't exactly what I want. I'd actually like the underside to remain perfectly flat. So to get around that, we need to lock all the bottom vertices in place. So let's press Ctrl Z really quick to undo this, and let's click channel box on the bottom right here, just so we have a little bit more room. And press 4 to move back into vertex mode. Press B to unhide the soft select. And now let's, from a view like this, let's try to drag across all the bottom ones. So we select all the bottom vertices and none of the top vertices. So that looks pretty good. Another way to do this is to press spacebar right now and go into a side view like this, and you press spacebar to expand the side view. And from this view, looking at my pyramid array on its side, it's much easier to select just the bottom ones. So to be sure, I can press 4 on the keyboard to open up wireframe and just cross window drag across all the bottom ones to select all the bottom ones. Press 5 and then let's press spacebar to move back out. And let's go back into this perspective window by pressing spacebar again. So just tumbling around here, I can see that I've selected all the bottom vertices. And in your channel layer box, let's click on it to make sure that it's expanded. Under CVs, click to show. I'm going to click that, and this becomes a list of all the points that are selected. So the easiest thing to do is click on the bottom left, on the upper left box here to highlight all of them in the channel box. Right click, and let's go down to lock selected. So now with those locked, no matter what you do with the soft select, these points won't move in space. So let's press 5 to move back into shaded view, and select one of these vertices. Maybe somewhere over here is okay. Press B to turn your soft select back on, and maybe adjust the fall off a little bit. Again, that's adjusting the fall off is holding down the letter B and then left click and drag. So now hopefully with those bottom vertices locked, I'll be able to move this up without affecting the entire the undersurface. So now that's more like it. So the bottom remains the same, even though the soft select is affecting it. So I can go around and pull these a little more. And maybe I can start, dragging some of these this way. Maybe dragging some of these this way. Feel free to experiment with different shapes, with different directions. I really would like you to come up with your own variation on this exercise. You can also press R to start scaling some of these vertices. Now the last step that we can do, which is also optional, but I think you guys might want to check it out anyways, is let's select this object and go to Mesh Separate. And now this will break up all the triangles back up into individual triangles. But if you notice, when I press W, the pivot point remains that same left corner. But what I want to do is actually select all of them and go to Modify Center Pivot. And so now the pivot is back to each individual pyramid. So let's cross window drag and select all the pyramids. Go to Modify, Transformation Tools, and let's go to Proportional Modification Tool Options. I'll click that. And now let's make sure, by default this will be something like 10. Let's switch it to 20, the distance cut off to 20, and leave everything else on the default. Now let's click the scale tool, the scale cube, to make it like this, and let's click and drag, and you'll see that all the pyramids are now scaling in a fall off proportional to the distance from where that pivot point is. So if I want to undo this real quick by pressing Ctrl Z, let's go to distance cutoff. So now before I scale it down, let's press D and move the pivot point somewhere else. Let's say it's over here. So I did that by holding down D and middle mouse dragging. So I'm going to put the pivot point somewhere here. And make sure that your snap is off in case it isn't already. So once again, D, middle mouse, put it somewhere here. And now let it go and press the cube. And now let's scale it down, and you'll see that the pyramids get larger depending on how close they are to the location of that pivot point. And so now this is a pretty cool effect, I think. So now I'd like you guys to go back and try your own version of this using spheres or cubes or even that 3D snowflake that we did in the previous lesson. The point is that using this technique, I want you guys to come up with your own creative spin on it. That's where the power of this technique lies. See you in the next lesson.